unapologetic, unadulterated, and uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the super fortress of intelligent black thought. This is the BlackChannel.net radio. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And tonight's broadcast is going to shock, bother, frighten, and offend you. That is, if you got anything resembling a brain. If you don't, it'll be like everything else. You'll just try to convert it into entertainment. Brothers and sisters, it's not going to be a long broadcast tonight because I've still got a lot of work ahead of me here. We got a lot going on, as always, at the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought, so we're doing what nobody else does. And I just need to make sure that I did commune with the brothers and sisters this weekend. I definitely had to do that. That was mandatory. And it's a good thing that we did, I guess. It's a good thing that we did because brothers and sisters, especially for the young ones, especially for the young people out there, for those of you in your teens and early 20s, you are entering the most deadly, dangerous time in history for black people. You are entering the most diabolical, treacherous period in black history, bar none. Bar none. And it is important for you to understand how you got here. A couple of days ago, if you were watching my Facebook, and if you're not, why are you not? It is the official Jason Black group on Facebook. There are even frauds and fakers out there now who want to make their own Facebook groups, I'm being told. Accept no substitutes. Only join the authentic, genuine, legitimate, knowledge-spreading organ in black society today. Anything else is coonery and buffoonery. But I digress. Michael Dunn, who murdered 17-year-old Jordan Russell Davis in 2013, white supremacy summer. They talk about the Arab Spring, but what about the white supremacist summer of 2013? They don't wish to talk about that. Well, we will here, and we do here. The white supremacist summer of 2013. The acquittal of George Baby Killer Zimmerman, followed up by another white supremacist, Michael Dunn, who decided that if he was going to go out, he was going to go out striking a blow for white supremacy and nothing else. Because, you see, he had been sitting on it his whole life. Like Darren Wilson, like Daniel Pantaleo, like all the others. They had been sitting on this for all these years. And now the real thing was ready to come out. And it starts a group contagion. You see, there have been studies that have been done that have shown that when one person runs a red light, people are shocked. But if two people run the red light, even if there's a red light, even if there's a cop standing there, two people run it. And then 4 people run it. And then 6 people run it. And then everybody's just going through the light, even if there's a police officer there. The police officer becomes irrelevant at that point. The only people who will not run the light are the people who it is not in their nature and not in their character to do so. Everybody else is just feeling that, well, hell, I'm finally free to be what I really am. And that is what caused the murder of Trayvon Martin and then Jordan Russell Davis and all the others up until Michael Brown and all the ones who will come after him. Michael Dunn, after much fighting and much work, I mean, it seemed for a little while there, I mean, he's had to go back to trial so many times now. First, they didn't want to find him guilty of murder, then finally did find him guilty of murder. First, they were saying he wouldn't, and you should have seen the chicken-headed baboon of a black female that they had on the jury. The prosecutor obviously did not want this man convicted of anything. Because the prosecutors in Florida, you think of Florida as an eastern state, and it is not. It is a southern state. It is a Confederacy state. It is part of that southern bigot train of thought and line of history in America. And the good old boys of Florida, the good old boys of the Confederate flag waving South that are in the judicial system, they wanted him acquitted like they got Zimmerman acquitted. But black society saw things differently this time. Maybe Trayvon was finally the last straw and black people realized that, hell, they're just out here killing us wholesale, and this system really will let them get away with it, and really will let them gun us down from one street to another. And so we kept up the pressure. This microphone kept up the pressure. You kept up the pressure. We kept it at the forefront every single day. The national news media did not want to cover this, and we said, damn you! We don't need you to cover this. We will do it ourselves. And we covered it, and we tracked it, and we dug up the documents, and we followed the story. When the national corporate media was looking for it to blow over so that they could return you to your regularly scheduled white supremacy already in progress, and we would not let the story go. And next thing you know, Michael Dunn found himself famous, found himself well-known, found himself infamous, and then found himself unable to escape. He has been sentenced to life without parole. And let me tell you, that's a stiff penalty. When I think about black men who've been in jail for 10, 12, 15, 20, 30 damn years or more, innocent, in the most inhumane prison system on the face of the planet, in the most inhumane prison system on earth, I gotta tell you all, living in a 6x6 cell, year after year, you know how you would feel if you could never leave your house for a year. If you had to just stay in your house for a year. Imagine having to stay in your bathroom for 10 years. Like that movie Old Boy. Imagine having to just stay in your bathroom for 10 years. It would drive you out of your mind. Knowing that everything is going to look the same. Nothing is going to look different. You're not going anywhere different. That's a living death. That's a living hell. And I can't think of anybody better to be resigned to that than a child killer like Michael Dunn. I can't think of anyone who deserves it more right now. Well, there are a few out there, but we'll take him for now. At least until we get the others. But you have to understand that they're not going to be able to placate us by throwing us a bone. I am not going to thank you for doing what you were supposed to do, especially when you tried to fight against it. Now we are not just going to keep on the pressure. We're going to triple down on the pressure now. We want all the others. We want Zimmerman. We want everybody. We want the ones that have not been convicted, and we want the ones that you acquitted who should have been convicted. We want them all. We want them all. For those of you who are young black people today, do you notice they are killing the children? And do you know why they are killing the children? They are killing the children because you, the children, are suffering for the sins of the fathers and the mothers. The cowardice of the fathers and the mothers. Because they would not fight then, white supremacy has been emboldened to come after you now. Because your great-grandparents and grandparents and parents taught them that they could abuse us and brutalize us and murder us and kill us, and nothing, we would never object. That they could take out all of their wicked, evil, little sadistic fantasies against us, and we would simply sit there and accept it. And that is why they feel emboldened to inflict that on you today. That is why they feel that they can get away with that now, because your parents taught them that they could do it and there would be no repercussions. Your parents taught them that black people's existence, that our reason for being here is to be abused. That is what your parents taught them. And that is what you are seeing come to pass today. And I know that a lot of you are having difficulty with that. You don't actually want to think of it in those terms, but the truth is your parents sold you down the river, and white supremacy is simply cashing the check that your parents gave them. That all of them now feel they can run the red light. Everybody now feels that they can get their licks in. They can get their notch on their belt. That they can justify and prove their existence to their fathers by killing one of you children. And the fact that you are children, and the society always talks about how heinous it is to commit a crime against a child. You notice they never refer to Michael Brown, Jordan Russell Davis, Trayvon Martin. They never referred to them as children. Never referred to them that way. Natalie Holloway, however, was a child. When you are black, you are not referred to as a child. Ayanna Jones was not referred to as a child by the national media. She was referred to as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, never referred to as a child. They do not refer to our children as child. They refer to our children as an age, as a number, but they do not put a humanizing face on one of our children. They do not do that because they are all a part of that apparatus. They are a part of an apparatus where they won't pull the trigger, but they're not going to assist you in bringing justice to the ones who did. They won't kill you, but they're not going to help you in any way to condemn the ones who did. So you end up with only two types of people: those who pull the trigger and those who protect those who pull the trigger. But you are not willing to accept this because there is something else that you want. You have been infected and corrupted the same as your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. You have taken a bite from that apple just like they did. And that is why even you as the children walk the streets offering yourselves up as sacrificial lambs to be slaughtered. That is what you are doing. Because an intelligent organism is supposed to fight for its own survival, and you have been conditioned to believe that you are not supposed to fight for your own survival, that there is something more important than your survival. That's what you have been taught, and that's what you have accepted. That there is something more important than your survival. And that is what they are counting on. That you are going to give up your life because they found something that matters to you more than life. Now that they've got that, they can do to you whatever they want. And you have decided that proving yourself to be non-threatening is your priority. It's worth more to you than money. It's worth more to you than life. That you want their acceptance so bad you are willing to sacrifice yourself, sacrifice your children, sacrifice everything. Because it means just that much to you to have that. It means everything. It means everything. And that's why you're doing it. The lives of you and your children mean nothing if you just have the potential to get that pat on the head. You will give it all up. You will give it all up. And that is why the children are suffering the sins of the fathers and the mothers. And you should be ashamed and disgusted. Michael Dunn did what he did. George Zimmerman did what he did. Eric Garner's killer, Daniel Pantaleo, did what he did. Michael Brown's murderer, Darren Wilson, did what he did because your fathers and your mothers taught them that we are simply here for their amusement, and that they offered up their own children for their sadism. Now, you might disagree with that. You might want to argue with that. You might not like it that I said that, but you can go to hell because it is the truth. Plain and simple, it is the truth. Today, I was reading a story. I'm going to post the link in the chat room, and I'm going to post the link on the official Jason Black page. Because I want you to see this. It is something that should shock, frighten, and shame you simultaneously. There is simply no good way to do it. So there's no point in even trying that. And I'm just going to tell you that if you're not ashamed by what you've seen, then there's something wrong with you. I was reading a story about a woman. She was a slave. Well, no, she was the daughter of a slave. And it's a situation where many people should be ashamed to see this kind of thing, but too many of you are not. Dateline, Raleigh, North Carolina. Confederate pomp amid burial of slave's daughter. Now, first of all, even under the best of circumstances, that is urinating on someone's grave. people who stood up for the slavery of you and your people, saying that they're going to bury you in Confederate style. That is urinating on your grave. Or is it? Because you see, some ghetto gaggers like that kind of thing. TBA! Yes. You're out of line, TBA! You can't talk like that! She's an elderly old woman. Well, she was before she died. Don't you have some respect for the dead, TBA? I have respect for those who show respect to me, because respect is not given, respect is earned. And by the time I get to the end of this story, you are going to feel totally different about that. And if you don't, then you are a slave also. Associated Press, Martha Wagner. When the ashes of Mattie Clyburn Rice, the daughter of a slave, are buried today, in her father's grave in North Carolina, in the North Carolina Piedmont, a color guard of Confederate reenactors will be in attendance. So will members of the United Daughters of Confederacy. Brothers and sisters, I am not making this up. That the daughter of a man enslaved in the 1800s should live to see the 21st century seems almost extraordinary enough, but equally remarkable is the record of her father, who went to war to cook for his master, saved the master's life, and ended up drawing a pension for his wartime service. The lives of Rice and her father, Weary Clyburn, who was in his early 80s when she was born, illustrate the tangled threads of history in connection to slavery, the Civil War, and its aftermath. Members of the Sons of the Confederate veterans who knew Rice say she regarded her father as a Confederate soldier, but historians and his pension papers say that's not exactly the case. He was a slave who went to war to serve his master. Now, wait till you hear a little bit more of the story here, okay? Just so you be aware, just remember that part about the pension papers, because it says the historians and his pension papers. So even the documentation that gave him his pension states what he was there for. She said that she regarded her father as a Confederate soldier, but history and the paperwork say otherwise. Quote, "There's really no debate about the question of whether African Americans fought for the Confederacy. We know they didn't," said author and historian Kevin Levin of Boston, who blogs about the rise and the belief in black Confederates. But Rice, that's the woman, who was 91 when she died in September in High Point, devoted her energy to confirming her father's Confederate service, said Tony Way, an SCV member who was arranging the funeral Saturday at Hillcrest Cemetery in Monroe. People didn't believe her when she said he was a Confederate soldier, Way said. She spent years searching records until she found his pension record approved by the state of North Carolina. Way led the push for a marker in Monroe honoring the Civil War service of 9 slaves, including Clyburn, and 1 free black. Before a 2012 ceremony unveiling that marker, Rice dismissed historians who consider black Confederates a myth. Now, here's her talking right now, okay? Listen to what she said to the Charlotte Observer. And try to hold down your lunch. She says, "A lot of people ask me if I'm angry. What do I have to be angry about? There's been slavery since the beginning of time. I'm not bitter about it, and I do not think my father would be bitter about it." End quote. A paternalistic 1930 obituary for Weary Clyburn said he was buried, quote, in the Confederate uniform of gray, yet it also called him, quote, Uncle Weary Clyburn, end quote, and described him as, quote, a white man's darky. His grave remained unmarked until the SCV, Sons of Confederate Veterans, lobbied the Veterans Administration for a headstone that was placed there in 2008, Way said. Rice said that asked that her cremated remains be buried in her father's grave, Way said. The UDC state presidents of North Carolina and South Carolina are scheduled to speak at her funeral. Records show Clyburn received a soldier's pension, yet they also classify him as something else. The pension records say, quote, his services were meritorious. We'll come back to that meritorious word shortly. His services were meritorious and faithful toward his master and the cause of the Confederacy, end quote. They described Clyburn as a bodyguard for his master who performed personal services for Robert E. Lee and, quote, that at Hilton Head, while under fire of the enemy, he carried his master out of the field of fire on his shoulder. His services were meritorious manumission. And they just confirmed for you why they were saying it was meritorious. And if you don't know your history, you don't understand what that means. But the only way that a slave could be esteemed under the system of white supremacy is if he saved his master's life or in some other way benefited them at the expense of himself. And how degrading that is. His services were meritorious and faithful toward his master. Towards who in the hell looks a grown man in the face and says you did good work toward your master? Like you're a dog. Like you're a roach. Like you're a gerbil. Like you're a pet rat. Who in the hell lets somebody talk to them like that? A cowardly and low-down generation that is willing to die to gain acceptance from the people who put shackles around their necks. That's who. And if you think that folk who would do something like this and surrender like this give a damn about you, you think that they give a rat's ass what happens to you. They gave themselves up and were beating themselves on the back, congratulating themselves for what they did. And you think they give a damn what happens to you? You think that they're sitting up at night worrying about respecting you? Now you're the coon. If you believe that, you're the coon now. Don't let reality and logic get in the way. They gave up their dignity and now you're right in line behind them. The story goes on to say, yet a letter dated June 18th, 1930 and signed by State Auditor Baxter Durham refuses to award Clyburn's pension to his widow because, quote, Negro pensioners are not classified as Confederate soldiers. That is what happened. Now, that is the state auditor telling his widow, oh, we ain't giving you a pension. You can't get a pension because Negroes, black folk, are not were not. Now, this was 1930, okay? This was 1930, 60 years after the end of the Civil War. 1930. And his widow was told, oh, blacks are not were not classified, are not classified as Confederate soldiers. Are not. No! You don't have to believe that. She didn't. Her daughter didn't. He didn't. It's unfortunate that we can't remember these men for who and what they were, said Levin the historian. They lived through the end of slavery. Now imagine being dragged into war. Because they were enslaved, they were forced to deal with the horrors of war. They were men forced to comply with their master's wishes, as they had always been forced to do. This is not a story about the Confederacy as a progressive nation in terms of relations, he added. If they had won the war, they would have furthered slavery and extended it. Thank God they lost. Now, that was what he said. Those were not my words, but I agree with every single thing he said. If they had won the war, the slavery would still be legal today. Every single one of you listening right now would be on a plantation in chains. If they had won. And she thought that this was okay. She only died last month, people. She only died last month. Let me go ahead and reiterate and remind you of the absolutely despicable thing that she said. A lot of people ask me if I'm angry. What do I have to be angry about? There's been slavery since the beginning of time. I'm not bitter about it. And I don't think my father would be bitter about it either. 91 years old. 91 years old. And her words might as well have been spoken by Jefferson Davis himself. Her words might as well have been spoken by Lincoln Rockwell himself. They might as well have been from the script of Birth of a Nation. Can you imagine being one of her children? Can you imagine what it would be like to be one of her children? Could you imagine what it would be like to be raised by her and to come to her talking about white supremacy? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the type of upbringing that you would have had? Can you imagine what she would have said if Trayvon Martin were her son? If Rodney King were her son? If James Byrd Jr. were her son? Could you imagine what she would tell you after you've been beaten, shot, maimed, murdered? Could you imagine what she would tell you? No, I want you to take a good long listen to that. And for those of you listening to this recorded, I want you to go back and I want you to listen to it again. I want for you to take a good long listen to that and start taking a look at your lives today and make the damn connection finally that you did not end up here by accident, and it was not accidental that you ended up here. You got here because you were sent, and you were sent because white supremacy cultivated a coon generation that did the unthinkable. They cultivated a generation of blacks that did the unthinkable. They actually shook hands with Beelzebub and said, I will do the work of selling out my children to you. May I please have a pat on the head? You will sell them all to me. Yes, I will, for time immemorial. Yes, I will. You will teach them to never question nor challenge me. Absolutely not. I'm gonna tell them, don't you start no barbershop. You got good white folks to go get your hair cut by. Don't you start no grocery store. You got good white folks down there at Kroger's. Be happy to sell you something there. Don't you talk about trying to start your own car dealership. You got good white folks to sell you a car all damn day long. You just look for you to get you a job over there. You be quiet. You be humble. You sit still. Don't you say nothing back, boy. That's very good, Miss Rice. Why, you sound just like me now. You sound just like me when you talk to your children. Come here. Oh, good, oh, good, oh, good. Let me wag my tail for you. That's a good girl. Such a good girl. There's one thing that Mr. Levin forgot in his statement, and I know why he didn't do it, because he was intelligent and he knew his place and he knew his boundaries. But as the black authority and as the representative of intelligent black society, I will not mince words. He stated that this is not a story about the Confederacy as a progressive nation in terms of relations. If they had won the war, they would have furthered slavery and extended it. Thank God they lost. There's only one addendum that I would make to that statement, Mr. Levin. If the Confederacy had won the war, and if people like Miss Rice and her daddy had had their way, we would still be on those plantations today. If the Confederacy, white supremacy, and the black white supremacists within our race had had their way, we would all still be on those plantations. If she had had her way, we would all still be there. We would all still be there. All of us. And that's what you need to recognize. Because you have told yourself a very pleasing lie. You have told yourself that the only reason they were cooning and buffooning and samboing and buck dancing was because they were held in chains on a plantation. And I am trying to get you to accept the reality, because those who do not learn from their history, thank you, Santiago, are doomed and condemned to repeat it. You are going to have to accept that some black people had to be beaten, bludgeoned, raped, decimated into servitude, but many of them did not. And that is the shameful aspect that most of you are unwilling to accept or confront. You see, there is a reason that white supremacists like the Sons of the Confederacy and the Daughters of the Confederacy are not afraid to talk about the blacks in the Confederacy. They're not afraid to talk about it because they know what the truth is, and they know that you are too ashamed to confront it. For her to tell you the truth that your daddy walked out there on the battlefield fighting and put his life on the line gleefully, with alacrity, with enthusiasm. We didn't have chains on him. As a matter of fact, we had to pull him back a few times. We never had to force anybody to go out there. We never did. We didn't have to rape your mama. She was sitting there right by the damn bed. Some of them were raped. A lot of them weren't. Some of them had to be beaten, but a lot of them didn't. And they know this. They know this because their parents told them that. See, they like being on the plantations. They like being on our plantation. We ran our plantation. They were like workers. I mean, we called them slaves, but they were like workers. They were like workers. And they actually liked being there. Why, they would work extra hard at Christmas time. They would go above and beyond what we asked them to do. They had made a life for themselves on our plantation as slaves. And most of you want to tell yourselves, no, that's not my history. That's not me. I didn't come from that. I didn't come from that. I didn't come from a bunch of people who butt dance. My great-great-great-grandmama didn't jump in bed with no slave master on her own. No, he had to drag her kicking and screaming and beating on her all the while. He had to do that. She never would have walked in there on her own and said, "Where is he? It's 6 o'clock. He needs to hurry up and get here." She never would have done that. Never. That's what you tell yourselves. Because you are in denial of the history. But they know your history. They know what really happened. And that's why they're not afraid of it. And that's why they're not afraid of you now. They're not afraid of you now because they knew how your fathers and your mothers reacted to them. And they know that you are going to do the same thing. And that is why they don't fear you. Because they can beat you and break you and rape you and bludgeon you and shred you to death. And you will show up talking about turn the other cheek. Because just like your fathers were willing to decimate their lives and your futures for a pat on the head, most of you today are willing to do the exact same thing because you have spent your life chasing something that you consider to be more valuable than money, white acceptance. And you will murder and bludgeon your own children to get it. You will do anything to have it, and you will give up your own children to get it. Just like she did. And just like her father before her did to her. Please tell me, brothers and sisters, how many white supremacists would have to drag her kicking and screaming? Tell me. Tell me how many white supremacists would have to drag her or her children kicking and screaming. Tell me. Tell me. Tell me what part of black empowerment she's going to teach you. Tell me what part of standing up against white supremacy is she going to teach you. Tell me. And now lastly, tell me, do you think she was the only one? Do you think that she was even a minority? I tell you all that the math is irrefutable. The mathematics, the numbers are irrefutable, unquestionable. There is no way that we end up in the situation that we are in today as black people if our forebears did not lie down on the bed of the whorehouse of submission. There's no way we end up where we are today. Superior numbers in South Carolina, superior numbers in Mississippi, superior numbers in Georgia, and yet we're the ones being stalked. How does that happen? That happens because your forebears willingly laid down. But when the war was over, they told you that they didn't. So you get this contradictory story from them, where they claim they didn't want to be slaves, but then you go take a look at what they did, and well, damn, you was carrying massa off the damn field on your shoulder. Why didn't you leave his ass there to die? Because if I could rescue him, boy, he'd give me a good pat on the head after that. Good pat on the head. Brothers and sisters, the truth about slavery is that we had very, very, very few people that we could actually be proud of from slavery. Very few. You had a Denmark Vesey. You had a Nat Turner. But you had very few black people that you could actually be proud of during slavery. Very few. And the descendants of the slave owners know this. The descendants of the slave owners know that most of you are the descendants of slaves who laid down. And they know that. And that is why they are reacting to you the way they are, because they know where you came from. See, you might lie to other black folk, but you can't lie to the white people who had your granddaddy on their plantation. You can't lie to him. He knows what they had to do and what they didn't have to do. How many of you have actually been to a plantation? Hands up! Hands up! How many of you have actually been to a plantation? Now, I have a bit of an unfair advantage of it since I live in a southern state in Louisiana. Some of you live up north. So a lot of you may have never actually been to one. Let me tell you, even here in Louisiana, there's one thing that you do not find on a slave plantation. One thing that if you take a look at all the pictures, take a look at the pictures on the cotton fields and whatnot, you see slaves dressed, some of them with coats, some of them with hats, straw hats, dresses, shoes. There is one thing that you rarely see in photographs of slaves. One thing that you rarely see. Shackles. You see, shackles would get in the way if you're trying to pick cotton, if you're trying to bale hay, if you're trying to stroke horses, milk cows. Shackles would be in the way. You need these people to work as quickly as possible, as unencumbered as possible. So you see, shackles actually get in the way. So we need to minimize the use of shackles. Go watch the movie 12 Years a Slave. At the beginning of it, when he's showing them how to cut on the sugar cane. Did you see anybody having to wear chains there? Even Solomon Northrop, was he wearing chains? They all were just standing there taking their orders. Master Charlie sitting up there on top of the horse in the carriage, watching them Negroes work away. If you didn't notice, brothers and sisters, there are actually few photographs that show slaves wearing shackles. Now, you're telling me that your great-great-granddaddy did not willingly sit at the table of white supremacy and make a choice? As the architect said in The Matrix Reloaded, even if the choice was at a near unconscious level. At some point, he made a conscious decision to sit and not run. And that was what the slave master was waiting for. That at some point, you would begin to see the world through his eyes. And pretty soon your vocabulary begins to shift. Your vocabulary begins to change. Your words and your thoughts begin to alter. And eventually you begin to speak just like him. You begin to talk just like him. This woman, and I use the term woman loosely, this woman sat here and regurgitated the rationales of white supremacy. This is like meeting a Jewish woman from Dachau, from Treblinka, from Auschwitz. This is like meeting a Jewish woman from one of the Nazi death camps, who would say something like, well, Jewish people were vermin to the economy, and, you know, it was war. And bad things happen during war. But I'm not angry about it. Nope, not at all. I'm not angry about it. And I don't think that my sister who got killed, or my mother who got gassed, or my father who got shot, I don't think he would be mad about it either. What do I got to be angry about? This was war. War has been going on since the beginning of time. What do I have to be angry about? Now, you take a look at the reaction to the Nazi death camps by the Jews, and then take a look at the reaction of slavery by black people. Take a look at the differences between those two reactions, and then you'll start to figure out why one of them recovered from the situation much better than the other, because one of them was looking for white acceptance and the other one was looking for power to make sure they'd never go through that again. And I wanted to bring you all here tonight because you are never going to be able to break the shackles on your minds and your spirits if you are unwilling to admit the truth of what actually occurred. Because if you don't know what the oppressor knows, then you can't stop him. You can never stop him if he knows what you don't know. Because you are repeating the mistakes of your parents and grandparents, and he knows that all he has to do is take his boot off your neck just a little bit, and then there's a part of you that you didn't even know was there. There's a part of you that you did not even know was there, that has been chomping at the bit, desirous, hungry, driven to come to the surface, bow at the altar. And you tell yourself that you're demanding freedom, but in reality, you're demanding that pat on the head. And after you get that, after you get him to finally acknowledge that you are a human being, he can pretty much do to you then whatever he wants to. He can pretty much do to you whatever he wants. This is going to be a tough thing for a lot of you to swallow. This is going to be a tough thing for a lot of you to take. Because you have taken it upon yourselves to deny our history, to deny our reality. and to tell yourself that if you do the exact same thing that they did, that somehow you will meet a different result. Not that you must confront white supremacy, but that you must find a way to appease it. You must find a way to appeal to their moral conscience and their humanity. And as Professor Black Truth pointed out in his broadcast, Eric Garner died and was strangled to death trying to appeal to the humanity of his murderers. And I'm telling all of you today that you are headed for the same fate if you don't change that. And you don't have 5 years to change it. You have to change it now. You have to understand who your enemy is now. You have to understand what the problem is now. And you have to understand what you have to do about it now. Starting with recognizing the enemy from within. Many of you were raised by coon parents. Can we just say it like it is? Many of you were raised by coon parents. Your parents were coons. Your grandparents were coons. Your great-grandparents were coons. Buck dancing, singing Sambo! Telling you, you must be non-threatening. You see, they didn't need white supremacy to be in their bedrooms and in their kitchens to indoctrinate their children. They told Massa, you go on home, I got this. I will see to it that my children are transformed and conditioned to be tools of servitude to you. And I want you all to get over a lie that you tell yourselves, that they all had to be beaten into servitude. No, they did not all have to be beaten into servitude. Many of them walked to the bedchamber on their own. Most of them were Sally Hemings. Few of them were Nat Turner. Few of them were Harriet Tubman. Few of them were Sojourner Truth. Very few. Most of them made their way to the master's bedchamber on their own. Because they were in a bad situation, and they said, I might as well make the best of it. "91 years old, and she went to her grave praising white supremacy, telling you that what happened wasn't so bad, regurgitating and reiterating and repeating the mantra, the rationales, and the slogans of the Confederacy, of her slave owners. Brothers and sisters, what died last month was a black white supremacist. A black person who subscribes to the ideology and the mores of white supremacy. And that's painful to a lot of you. A lot of you are hurt to hear this. It's painful to you because you were conditioned to be the dogs of your elders, and your elders were the dogs of white supremacy, and you are afraid to say it like that. And that is why your condition does not change, and George Zimmerman knows he can come and pick you off. Michael Dunn knows he can come and pick you off. Johannes Medley knows he can come and pick you off. Daniel Pantaleo knows he can come and pick you off. Darren Wilson knows he can come and pick you off. See how long that list got that quickly? They know that they can come and pick you off because they know that they are not afraid to look at their history, and you are. They are not afraid to accept your history, and you are. And that is why our difference in response is so crucial. Because you see, Michael Dunn is on his way to prison for the rest of his life. And no, I mean the door has been closed, because once you've been sentenced to that, it takes a major event to get you out of that. In his case, there's not going to be any major event. I don't think it's going to be any major event to do that. If they do, it'll be great. If they do intervene, if the court system does intervene and try to reduce his sentence or commute his sentence or something, that'll be great. That'll be wonderful. That would be fabulous. Because I want you all to stop lying to yourselves about us being at war in the situation that you're in. So if they did intervene, that would actually be great. Because maybe then you'd wake the hell up. Michael Dunn is going to jail for the rest of his life. I could tell you why it happened. I could tell you why that happened. And the best way to tell you how it happened is by telling you how it didn't happen. Let me tell you all why it didn't happen. Let me tell you all what didn't happen. You see, you didn't show up praying. You didn't show up singing. You didn't show up buck dancing. You didn't send no pastors and no reverends. Pastor Cornbread didn't show up for this one. You didn't go out there talking about let the system run its course. You showed up and you said there is only one outcome that is acceptable, his head on a spike. And that is it. And we will accept nothing short. You made it clear that we were not here to sing Kumbaya. We were here to sing Bury His Ass. You didn't show up marching and protesting at City Hall every day. You made it clear what you wanted. And in Ferguson, we've made it clear what we want. And we've also made it clear that we are going to have it even if we gotta come and take it. And as a matter of fact, I prefer the latter. We should go and take it. We should go take it all. We got 400 years, 500 years to make up for. I'm in favor of going and go take it all. Let's just go take it all. You didn't show up begging for mercy. You didn't show up begging. And in Ferguson, you're not begging. You're not calling the pastors and the clergy. As a matter of fact, there have been several stories that have come out now. Several stories that have come out from the Washington Post to The Root to USA Today. Several stories have come out that have said young blacks are leading the march. Young blacks are leading the charge. They do not want the civil rights coons, and they don't want the clergy and the reverends. They don't want the civil rights coons, and they don't want the clergy. And let me tell you, you're going to get better results down there in Ferguson than they're going to get up there in New York hugging on Al Sharpton. Folks in Ferguson woke the hell up quick and said, damn that, we don't need more preaching. We don't want another damn preacher. And we are not going to accept any outcome other than his head on a stake. And that's why the response here has been so different. That's what you didn't do. You didn't go buck dancing and singing. I know there's been a couple of coons out there trying to sambo. A couple of bedwenches hugging on police officers. I know, we've seen that. But understand, you are always going to have that. But that's why you have the Black Channel as a place where we articulate for you what that is. And we point out to you that we've seen that. We communicate to our people. And we are all on the same page. We reject that. The Black Channel has a listenership in Ferguson. and the word has come down. You have made it clear that the goal is to overthrow the government of Ferguson. And nothing short of that will do. We want absolutely nothing less than the overthrowing of the government of Ferguson, and to replace it with a government that reflects the people. And we will not compromise. Yeah, that's what they're worried about. This time is different, because we're not asking you to give us a couple of jobs at the Department of Sanitation. And we're not asking for some damn diversity training. We're not sitting up here begging people to give us another damn handout, a pat on the head. We've made it very, very clear that we're not gonna do the old thing anymore. We don't want a damn pat on the head from you bastards. Only thing we want to talk about with heads is taking yours and taking names. I held this broadcast tonight because I wanted you all to know the situation that you are in, that it's not new. You told yourselves that the only reason they ever would bow down is because someone had a shotgun to their heads and shackles around their necks. You told yourselves that this was all new, that it was the Klan that made them do it. It was Jim Crow that made them do it. It was the plantations that made them do it. You all told yourselves that that was all behind us and we had nothing but virtuous people to look up to. You told yourselves that the only thing you had to worry about was the Klan and the white supremacist cops. And I'm telling you that the Klan and the white supremacist cops have risen. And the reason that they have risen is because they know your people. You don't. They know your people. You're the one who doesn't know them. They know exactly what your grandmama and your great-grandmama was up to. You are the one who is in denial. You are the one who refuses to confront your parents and ask them for proof of what they did during civil rights. Demand proof of it. You are the one afraid to have that conversation because you know that when they start stumbling for words, bumbling for words, no dates, no proof, no nothing, that you'll have to start realizing that, man, mama's a damn lie. Daddy's a damn lie. They didn't do nothing. And then go talk to some of their old classmates. Go talk to some of your parents' old classmates from high school. Find out what they were really doing. Some of you are going to find a couple of white supremacist boyfriends and white supremacist girlfriends in the mix. I just wanted to throw that out there for you. If you ask your mama and your daddy and your grandmama and your granddaddy enough, if you question them long enough, you're going to see a white supremacist fall out the closet. That bone is going to fall out of the closet. And many of you are shamed and afraid to have that conversation and ask that. You're afraid to ask that because you don't want to know what the truth is. You don't actually want to know the reality. You don't want to have to look at your parents and admit what they were and what they are. You don't want to have to do that. That coon gene has been passed to you. They bowed, and now you seek to bow. And I'm telling you all that Miss Rice The spirit of Miss Rice is alive and well in so many of you. So many of you. And she made it very clear to you that slavery was no big deal to her. That's just what happens. What you've heard from white Confederates, well, from Confederates, those are the only Confederates, white supremacists, Klansmen, bigots, racists, what you've heard from them your entire life, she regurgitated it. To her deathbed, she regurgitated it. That there was no difference. Saying that she was a slave and at the same time it was no big deal. If it was no big deal, why the hell was your daddy a slave? If your daddy being a slave was no big deal, then why the hell are you concerned about it? She's concerned about it because she knew. And she sees the eyes through the world of white supremacy the way her father did. And I'm telling you that you don't need white supremacy in your house when you've got black folk like Rice. Who in the world needs Roger B. Tawney to say that the black man has no rights that the white man is obligated to respect when you've got Mattie Clyburn Rice? Who needs them? Who needs Birth of a Nation when you have Mattie Clyburn Rice? I'm asking you. Do you really need a Ku Klux Klan when you have Mattie Clyburn Rice? Do you really need them? You see, there are black folk who make it their daily job to defang and disable and trip up the rest of us from the inside. To try to destabilize us and sabotage us from the inside. So that massa ain't gotta do it. Don't you understand that most of your elders hate themselves? They hate themselves and they hate being black. Why? Because they identify with that which they are not and can never be. They see the world through his eyes. And they despise black people the same way that he does. They don't see you any differently. And if you are afraid to call that out, no wonder he can have children. And here she is, and she can have children, and the cycle continues. Why? Because nobody ever gets to the root of the problem. Nobody ever gets to the root. And because you never actually get there, you never actually stop it. Mattie Clyburn Rice was a black white supremacist. So was her father. And probably his father before him. She did not have to be drugged to the bed of white supremacy. She put on her perfume, shampooed her hair, shined her shoes, bleached her dress, made sure it was clean, checked her makeup and her lipstick, and she showed up at Massa's bedroom 2 hours early so she could make sure he wasn't waiting. She drew the curtains and drew the blinds. She lit the candles, burned some incense. She stared out of the window, down at the field Negroes, who were looking at her with disdain, shaking their heads. And she turned up her nose and snorted. You're all just jealous because I get to be here and you don't. And you're talking about respecting that? You are not at war with that? You do not object to that? You don't? Then you can go to hell. Because if your definition of respect is anything other than absolute war against that, then you and I ain't got nothing in common. Because you see, your definition of respect comes from a dog's life and a dog's point of view. You inhabit the world of the dog. The world of scum, the world of pets, the world of slaves. And I inhabit the world of men. So if me showing respect means that I have to join you and the rest of the dogs, you can go to hell. You see, the Coons and Sambos help white supremacy because in their minds, here's what you all don't want to accept. You don't want to accept the fact that white supremacy broke them. Can we just say it like it is? They broke them. They broke them. They broke your daddy. They broke your mama. They broke your granddaddy. They broke your great-grandmama. They broke them. When you go to prison, that's what they call it. And isn't it, mate? If you ever saw that Leon Isaac Kennedy movie, Penitentiary, they called it buck breaking. That's what they call it in the prisons. And that's what they called it on the plantations. Buck breaking. You see, you might have started out a strong black male, but they're going to ride you. And they're going to brutalize you. Until eventually they get you to a point that that you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice that you will either give in or die. And he is hedging his bets that you will give in. That there is something more valuable to you than your life, than your dignity, than your children. And most of you will not face the reality that your grandparents and your great-grandparents got broken. They did not get beaten, they got broken. And many of you just will not accept that reality, that your folk got broken. And that's going to be a hard thing for a lot of you to swallow, and it's going to be a hard thing for a lot of you to take. But your folks got broken. That was what happened to them. Your people got broken. White supremacy was actually able to break them. And that's why you don't want to say anything about that. Because you don't want to have to admit to the reality that your people actually got broken. You don't want to have to face that. Because if you do, then you are going to have to admit to yourself that you have to do something different and that you have nothing to look forward to with them. Nothing to look up to with them. Nothing to admire about them. And I'm telling you that the sooner that you understand that, the better things will be. The sooner you accept that, the better things will be. But you have to come to a basic understanding, my brothers and my sisters from around the world. If you do not want to get broken, you must accept the reality that your forebears did. That they got broken. Because they did what many of you do. They bowed, they scraped. They tried to talk. They tried to be non-threatening. And don't you understand that the moment that you accept that the only way that you can relate to people who brutalize you is by being non-threatening, you have already just been broken. You just got broken and didn't even realize that's you. Because you think that because you think defiance, that means you're not broken yet. Brothers and sisters, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you think. It only matters what you do. Because you're sitting there thinking like a black nationalist, but you're crawling in bed winching like a hoe. So you think like a free person, but you act like a slave. And ultimately, the only thing that matters is what you do. So you can think of yourself as free as you want to. Just white supremacy loves that. Think of yourself as free. The freest person in the world is a bedwench. Yeah, I know that seems like such a contradiction in terms. The freest person in the world is a bedwench. Hugh Hefner has been getting the most desired white women on earth to strip ass naked for him for 5 decades, telling that mental jujitsu sleight of hand that the most respected woman in the world is naked. If you really love yourself, you'll get naked. If you really love yourself, you'll be a bedwench. If you really love yourself, you'll dance a jig for us. The freest person isn't the black person who goes around talking about what he wants to do. No, the freest person is the black person who comes to the plantation and dances a jig. That's the free one. You haven't really lived until you've been a Sambo. I mean, didn't you make a choice to do that? We let you choose what kind of shoes you wear, what kind of hat you wear. We let you choose all of that. Doesn't that mean you're free? Doesn't that mean you're free now? Yeah, that's what it means. Brothers and sisters, I come here to you tonight because I want the future to be different from the past. And that is not going to happen if we do not come to grips with and make peace with the fact that most of you come from people who were broken. Accept the reality that white supremacy broke them. It broke them. And the only way that you are going to have a free future is if you face the reality that they were broken. That is the only path for you to come to the conclusion that you will not be broken. Because once you accept that, yeah, they got broken, when you catch yourself doing those little things that they did, you can no longer lie to yourself and tell yourself that you're still behaving in a free manner. You now understand that, no, that's the way a broken person responds. when you start trying to give yourself those little rationales like she did, do you know what she was really saying when she said that, what do I have to be mad about? What she was really saying is, what do I have to want to challenge white supremacy about? Why do I need to fight them? Why do I need to stand up to them? Well, because they enslaved your daddy in slavery. They enslaved us. Slavery's been going on since the beginning of time. And you know what? That is the point that I want us all to get to. I want these damn lying ass jigaboon super coon buffoon idiots to finally speak the truth about what they believe and what they think and what they really mean. Because we have allowed them to tell these damn lies now for 5 centuries. These traitors walking in our midst, we've allowed them to lie about what they really think and what they're really after for centuries now. And it is time for us to make a choice tonight. Because this is about nothing less than the existence of African peoples and the survival of African people. This is about nothing short of that. Whether we will live or whether we will die. And being a slave ain't no living. This is about nothing short of the fate of African peoples. Of black people around the world. This is about nothing short of what will occur to us. Will we live or will we die? That's what the stakes are. That's what this is all about. And that is why I want people like Mattie Clyburn Rice to expose themselves and to finally tell you all what it is she really believes and what it is she really thinks. And I want to know if you are going to sign up for that. I want to know if you're going to go along with it. Now that she just told you that's what she believes. Will you sign on? Will you go along too? Do you just say that, well, slavery's been going on since the beginning of time? Murder has been going on since the beginning of time too, you know. Murder has been going on since the beginning of human history, you know. And they killed plenty of black folk. They murdered plenty of black folk in slavery. You cannot co-sign slavery, which is what she did. Do you all realize that's what she did at 91? 91 years old, and she was co-signing slavery. 91 years old. Check mark. Vote for her. Vote slavery. I can see her campaign slogan now. Freedom is overrated. And that's why I'm glad that she came out and finally said exactly what she thought. Well, hell, slavery ain't no big deal. And I want to know tonight, how many of you think slavery is no big deal? Because that's what she said. That ain't no big deal. Been happening since the beginning of time. She treated it like you just sat here and said, oh, I sprained my ankle. Well, people have been spraining their ankles since the beginning of time. I have a tear in my skirt. People have been tearing their skirts since the beginning of time. They've been ripping their clothes since the beginning of time. It happens. It happens. I broke an egg this morning. People have been breaking eggs since the beginning of time. Come on. This woman actually sat here and trivialized slavery of herself, of her father. She looked at her own father's grave and trivialized his life and what happened to him. She trivialized it. Do you understand that's what she did? Who needs the boot of white supremacy on their throats when they have Mattie Clyburn Rice and her ilk? Who needs it? Do you really need a slave master when you've got that? I'm asking simple questions of you right now. Do you really need it? Because individuals like her, that's where they're going to take you. And we've got plenty of them among us. She was 91 years old. She wasn't some young, dumb kid. And she went looking for her father's records of his pension. She was not stupid. She was not uninformed. She was not ignorant. She was a collaborator. And she looks at all of you with the same disgust and disdain that her daddy's master had. And I want to know how many of you are going to go along with that. How many of you are going to trivialize slavery? How many of you are going to drink from the same cup as Mattie Clyburn Rice? How many of you are going to join her? That's what I want to know. You want to know why in the world I had to be the person who finally broke the fraud? You want to know why? Because in the 21st century, there will be no turncoats. There will be no traitors. There will be no people talking black empowerment but living white supremacy. There will be no more. And when we catch you, you will be dealt with immediately. Are you going to go along with that? Is that going to be you? Is that going to be you trivializing the death of Trayvon Martin? Trivializing the death of Eric Garner? And when it happens to your kids, trivializing it then too? Is that gonna be you? Cause if that's you, get the damn hell away from me. You and I have nothing in common and nothing to talk about. And I don't want to be breathing the same air you're in. We got plenty of Sambos, super coons running around here today. Everybody wants to make an excuse for it. Everybody wants to give a pass for it. Everybody wants to do everything except stand up to it. Let me say this in absolutely no mistakable terms tonight. And I want to be clear as I can be about this. If you talk like Mattie Clyburn Rice, you are the enemy. Plain and simple. You are the enemy. I am at war with white supremacy, whether that is white supremacy from without or white supremacy from within. I am at war with the white supremacists. I am at war with the black white supremacists. I am at war with the Asian, Latino, and every other shade, color, creed, technicolor tint you can name. I am at war with white supremacy in every shape, form, fashion, manner, color, stripe, spot. It does not matter what it comes wearing. I am at war with it. And age is not an excuse. Age is not a defense. And age is not going to be a protection. Well, I have the right to sabotage and try to destroy black empowerment and black people from within because I'm old. Anybody who goes along with that, you're the enemy too. Oh, that was terrible. I just hit a nerve. I just had my numbers just dropped by like 7, 8 just right then when I said that. When I said that right there, what I just said, that if you're like her, you're the enemy no matter what age you are. You should have seen that. A bunch of folk dropped off. A bunch of you have been inculcated. A bunch of you have been conditioned by your parents to be their slaves the way that they were conditioned by white supremacy to be white supremacy slaves. And you are doing the unimaginable, the unthinkable. You are actually proud, applauding yourself to be working and fighting against your own best interests. You see, your parents didn't have to put a shackle on you. You put that one on yourself. Because you want a pat on the head from them the way that they wanted a pat on the head from white supremacy. All these mentally and emotionally deficient people running around here, instead of being proud and being secure in who and what you are, you're looking for somebody else to validate you. And you're offended. You're offended that the truth would actually be told because you don't want to hear the truth about your parents and your grandparents. You don't want to hear that you have to take action. So what you're going to try to do is say that, well, they're old, so we really shouldn't be disrespecting the old folk because, you know, well, they're just old. And what does it matter that they're old? Well, they're just old, man. They're just old. What you're really saying is, man, don't tell me I gotta fight. You know, old folk been selling us out since the beginning of time. Old people have been selling out their children since the beginning of time. Why should I be upset? Children have been sold out by their parents since the beginning of time. Why should I be upset with Mattie Clyburn Rice? So she sold us out. Old folk been selling out their children since the beginning of time. Well, how do we respond to that? Man, just let it ride. Let it ride? Yeah, man, just let it go, you know. I mean, just, man, you know. Hey, you sound like a plantation slave master. Bad things happen to us, but, stuff happens. Just don't worry about it. No, bad things happen to me, and now a lot more bad stuff is about to happen to you. That's the way that works. You do something bad to me, now something worse is about to happen to you. That is the way it works. I do not want equality. I don't want parity. I want empowerment. And the scales have been lopsided against us for 5 centuries. It's time for it to be lopsided in our favor and go all one way for about 5 centuries here. But understand, we have individuals inside black society, both male and female, both young and old, both city and country, both northern and southern, who are actually working against black people and deliberately, consciously working in the benefit of white supremacy because they see all of us as the enemy. Mattie Clyburn Rice, at her old age, 91 years old, and she saw her children and her grandchildren and every other black person standing around her as the enemy. She saw all of us as her enemy. The only people she could relate to were the white supremacists who owned her daddy and thus owned her. As you can tell, they obviously owned her. She saw the world through their eyes. So I just want to know who's going to be honest. Who is going to be like her and just come out and just say it? TBA, you know, I'm not happy that Trayvon Martin got killed, but man, niggas kill each other every day, TBA. TBA, niggas kill each other every day. What's the big deal? What about black on black crime, TBA? What do I have to be mad about? Why do I need to be mad at white supremacy? Black folk die every day. Black folk been getting killed since the beginning of time. What do I got to get mad at white supremacy for if they kill us? We should be used to dying by now, TBA. We should be used to it. See, that's what Mattie Clyburn Rice didn't go ahead and say that part. People been getting slaves since the beginning of time. Black folks should be used to it by now. It ain't no big deal. Now, brothers and sisters, does a statement like that benefit anybody except the slave owner? Who in the hell does that benefit except the slave owner? Michael Dunn, George Zimmerman, and their ilk are coming after you today because they have watched for 5 centuries as the Mattie Clyburn Rices and the Psycho Mayors and the Crystal Wrights and the Crystalline Karazines and all their kind, they have watched for 5 centuries now as we buck danced, as we sambo shuffled, as we sat there and tried to entertain them and appease them as they brutalized and murdered us. And the greatest sin that a slave can ever commit is to stop resisting the man who is trying to enslave him long enough that he is able to even get you to see the world through his eyes. You are never even supposed to allow that to happen. You know, on the slave ships, you all remember they told you the stories on the slave ships where the African mothers would jump off the ships with their babies because they would rather do that than to go into slavery. But you notice the ships never showed up in America empty. They never showed up in America empty. You see, if enough Africans had simply killed themselves before they went to the fields, that alone would have stopped the Europeans from going to Africa. They'd be like, man, these people will not be slaves. They just will not. They fight us. They bite us. They burn us. They torment us. And even when we get one off by themselves, they would rather kill themselves than to be a slave to us. They'd rather die than be a slave. It is too damn much trouble. These people will not be enslaved. They just won't. They just won't. We need to stop and let it go. They won't go for it. Today you've got single mothers who, once again, the Faustian bargain. They will sell out their children for a Section 8 voucher. Black womanhood has fallen a long way from the proud African women who would rather die with their children than see them slaves. And today we can get black women to make their children slaves for a WIC voucher. Hell, they'll go off and go get pregnant so they can give white supremacy a child to put in the white supremacist prison industrial complex for a WIC voucher. And you thought this was all new. No, brothers and sisters. I'm telling you that the coons and clowns you're dealing with now are the children of Mattie Clyburn Rice. They are her children. And we have to make a decision now that this is the defining struggle of our lives. We are going to have to slay white supremacy and destroy collaboration within the black body politic. We have to make that decision now because the previous generations did not do it. We had prophets who spoke, but the previous generations did not do it. It is up to us now. It's up to us. Who's got the courage to face the truth? And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the BlackChannel.net radio. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.